This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Commissioner Carlson?
Here.
Commissioner Meadows?
Here.
Commissioner Haskew?
Here.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Here.
Chair Perkins?
Here.
We do have a quorum. We have not received any public comments.
There we go. Election of chair and vice chair for 2024. Is there a normal rotation?
I would be happy to offer a nomination.
Okay.
I would nominate Vice Chair Kelly to be our chair for the next year, with Mayor Haskew, Commissioner Haskew being our vice chair.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, Carlson, and a second by Meadows for Kelly and Haskew serving as chair and vice chair. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Carlson?
Aye.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew?
Aye.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Aye.
Chair Perkins?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
There we go. All right. Your turn.
Thank you, Scott. So the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. There are 3 items on there. Do we have any comments? Does anyone want to pull an item? No. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar?
We have not received any public comments.
And we haven't received any written or remote public comments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So do I have a motion then?
I move approval.
Second. Okay, motion by Meadows, second by Haskew. Emily, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Carlson?
Aye.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins?
Aye.
Vice Chair Haskew?
Aye.
Chair Kelly?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so now we move on to our regular agenda items. And the first item is the feasibility study for expanded ferry service being presented by Ying Smith. Welcome, Ying.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations. Ying Smith, Director of Mobility Programs, happy to be here to present the feasibility study for ferry service expansion. Before I start, I want to introduce Jean Banker, who is from McDonald, who is our consultant on this study. And we'd also like to recognize we have WITA staff online, Gabe and Mike online, and thank you. And WITA has been a technical partner for this study, and they have done a lot of work to support us. So they are here standby to answer any questions related WITA or technical questions. So with that, I will start. Jean and I will tag team today. And many of you have actually follow the study, it's a partnership between us, CCTA, and 4 cities, as well as the county. Let's see if I can advance the slides. There we go. So we would like to, this is really a final report to you, quite a bit of information, and thank you for your patience. And want to mostly share the information and some details. There's no staff recommendation, as today's presentation is an informational item. And we'd like to just give you an overview of the topics we're going to cover. We're going to share with you the project scope, our approach in the study and assumptions. We talk about operating costs, capital costs, and we also talk about some future vehicle, vessel and zero emission vessel options. We also want to talk about funding as well as the next steps. And as I mentioned, this is a partnership. We have 4 cities going from west to east: City of Hercules, Martinez, Pittsburgh, Antioch. The county has been a big supporter. I also mentioned that WITA is a technical partner, as well as Tri-Delta Transit. CCTA is a staff to put this study together and engage in stakeholder engagement. And first is the overview of how we did the study. Mostly we can break down the study into 4 tasks. We started in the fall last year, and task 1 is the data collection as well as analysis. We also developed the draft methodology and get input from the city partners. And then the next step, we evaluate the service feasibility as operating costs and operating scenarios. Task 3, we go into capital cost analysis. You will see here a lot of details. I don't need to go over that right now. And then task 4 is a wrap-up of the documentation of the study. So just give people some orientation. We have 4 cities along the northern and eastern waterfront. And today's service show up as the blue lines that are operated by WITA. And we know also Golden Gate Transit and Ferry also operate services to San Francisco. And in our study, we have to make some assumptions what kind of service scenario we need to include. We assume the direct service between each city and the San Francisco downtown ferry terminal. So that is a kind of simplified assumption. Doesn't mean that when we run the service, we cannot run additional stops, but it just want to give you a map to give you the orientation of the 4 locations here. Working on the advancing slides. So I want to talk about our approach. We can really describe it as a simple benefit cost analysis. On the left side, the benefits, look at the demand potential, that's a potential ridership. We also look at the additional transit connections, especially to the equity priority communities. We also look at the benefits that are not necessarily transportation related, the economic benefits, as well as additional access to the waterfront. And of course, there's always the environmental side, the greenhouse gas emission, as well as reduce in congestion. On the cost side, as I mentioned, there's operating costs, capital costs divided by land side, water side, contribution to an operations and maintenance facility, vessel procurement costs, as well as at some locations, the dredging cost. So I will start out to just share with you the methodology on demand potential. So in a more typical, more extensive study, we probably use the travel demand forecasting model to project the ridership. In this case, we chose a more qualitative method. We call it demand potential. There are several reasons for it. One is, I would say, the primary consideration is the post-pandemic travel pattern. Although we're pretty stable now, relatively speaking, it's still a lot of unknown in the future. So we don't think the travel demand forecasting model is appropriate for this study. We choose a more qualitative method to look at the travel demand both existing and project into the future, the travel time competitiveness, and as well as the land use around both the terminal as well as the bigger city. And this is a softer kind of term. We compare each city with Richmond, because Richmond is the only service we have. We use Richmond as a benchmark. And we use this color-coded, we call it a scorecard, actually. Martinez City Council gave us that terminology, very, very smart. So in the middle, the color that shows up as more a salmon color, that means it's neutral, right? The city will be kind of more or less on par with City Richmond's performance for that particular performance metric. If it's in the the blue color, that means the city overperforms compared to Richmond. If it's in the orange color, that means for that factor, the city underperforms compared to Richmond. So when we look at cost, again, is divided into the three big categories. Landside, waterside, contribution to a maintenance facility, and we sum it up. And again, at this stage, it's an order of magnitude cost estimate. And then get to another topic of dredging. So we look at both the initial dredging as well as the annual dredging needs. And we have the cost estimate. So again, order of magnitude. So let's jump to how we look at the operating cost. As I mentioned earlier, we have a more simplified approach of looking at the direct service. We look at two vessel types. One is what is recommended by WITA staff, the Dorado vessel, and the other one is to partner with POP SF, which is a private operator, use a smaller vessel. We look at three service scenarios, we call 1, 2, 3. Level 3 is what Richmond has today. That is all-day service during the week, and plus weekend service on both Saturday and Sunday. And peeling back, level 1 is the peak service only, which is similar to where we started with the Richmond service back in 2019. That's peak only on weekdays only. Level 2 is like in the middle, it's all-day service on weekdays. So this is like, it's still pretty busy. You have 3 levels and 2 vessel types. So we will show you some numbers. And just a little bit, because there's a lot of interest in the different vessel types. Dorado is a family of vessels. The typical capacity is about 320 passengers, and the speed is pretty high speed. It is diesel-based. And the model is in the WITA structure is the vessel will be owned by WITA, and they will operate using the existing contractor. With the POP SF model, Billy J is a smaller vessel. It's about 70 capacity. The peak speed is about the same as the WITA model. So when you look at the travel time, they're about the same. And in this model, the vessel will be owned by the private operator, POP SF. And so with this, you can see this is the 2 bookends, right? Again, if we do run a service, doesn't mean that has to be those exact vessels, but we'll choose the 2, one much bigger, the other one smaller, kind of 2 bookends as a comparison.
You show the maximum speed, but what is the normal operating speed?
I believe it's about in the low 30s. And then when we calculate the travel time, we're using the normal operating speed.
The normal operating speed is not the maximum speed?
No, it's not. No, it's a couple knots lower.
Did you take into consideration personnel costs? Because I would assume on the smaller ship it would be less.
Yeah, you see the numbers. There's a difference. And we will go into, so we have 4 cities, and you can see the slide deck is actually pretty thick. And our suggestion is we actually choose 2 cities to go over that, and then you can suggest, but we suggest maybe go from west to east, like we start with Hercules, and the other one we'll probably choose Pittsburgh, unless you have other suggestions. So Jean, do you want to take over from here?
Sure, good afternoon. Again, my name is Jean Banker with Mott McDonald, and we helped Ying put this study together. So Hercules is an interesting city to study for this. They had two different locations they wanted us to look at, all of which had various benefits and strong reasons why they'd be good spots for ferry service. Ying, did you want to talk about the scorecard piece of this? And then I'll talk about costs, because my last name is Banker, so I'm the bad news money person. And Ying's going to talk about the positive service-related
Yeah,
stuff.
of course. So you can see the scorecard, we're using this, it's color-coded. And we don't necessarily have to go into each factor, but our summary is the city has done a lot of work to prepare the hub, and with the land use plan, with a lot of investment. So the plus side is there's a really strong land use support for either both locations are very close to each other. So on the land use side, the city scores pretty well. So there's also plan to provide transit connections as well as the bike and pedestrian facilities. And I think we don't necessarily have to go into there's dredging costs that we'll cover later, but in terms of demand potential and also the distance to San Francisco is also a plus for Hercules locations. So on the demand side, there are few factors the city scores pretty well compared to Richmond, and there are a few of them that may score a little bit lower, but when the city, as the city developed its land use plan, those things will be really positive to generate the future ridership. Jump to, and also on, I talk about the other benefits that's not necessarily transportation related. City staff did a really good job to give us details. We asked for guiding questions, and this is a summary. We talk about the regional hub. The city has the plan to attract additional stop of the Capital Corridor, and the land use side that we talk about, and other activities. What is very strong is the public and stakeholder input the city has received. So we would really appreciate the additional input from city staff. And here is actually a summary of all the cost, and Vice Chair Haskew to answer a question on operating cost. So you can see there's actually quite a basically like 3 rows and 4 factors here, right? Let's pick something like level 1. Let's pick that. Under the point versus hub, the numbers are the same for the operating cost. For level 1, if we use the Dorado model, it's more expensive. It's about $16.8 million per year. If we use the POP SF model, that's 10.6. So the total cost includes the labor that is built on, for the WITA model, we build on their current operating costs. And though that number is more reliable because that's the model they're running today. The POP SF model is more of a projection because they haven't been using this particular type of relationship with a private operator. But still, they did a lot of work, and you see the cost goes up as we increase the service model, with the service level. So one thing to keep in mind, on this table, the top side, the capital costs, those are pretty hard numbers. So you do have to have a minimum number of infrastructure improvements. But when it comes to the operating cost, once you have the infrastructure, you can run different service scenarios. Again, the 3 levels will give you, level 1 is really, really the minimum. The cost will not go much lower than that. Level 2 and 3, there's different ways you can run the service. As the demand increases, you can increase the service level. But that also, that means we need to increase the cost. So in this one, we will, I think, Jean, you will take over to talk about the details on the capital costs, right?
Yeah, I would just add that on the operating side, as you can see, ferry service is expensive. I would say that the difference between the smaller vessel, Prop SF and WIDA, is great because the two major costs to operating a ferry service is labor and fuel. And we are basing this off of diesel fuel vessels right now. Of course, we hope that that technology changes, and we have a slide about that in a little bit. We'll talk about that. But because those two things are the operating cost drivers, labor is a lot more on the larger WIDA vessel than it is on Prop SF. So not only could you phase service between level 1 and level 3 like Richmond do, you could also phase your choice of vessel, start with a small Prop SF vessel and then move to a larger WIDA vessel as you gain experience. So that can be seen as a progressive phased approach as opposed to one set number. This is just another way to look at the operating costs, and this slide really doesn't tell you anything more other than the fact that it compares to Richmond service. This year's Richmond service is $10.2 million, and it is a lot less, as you can see. And the major difference there is that the current Richmond service is able to work in sort of benefits with interlining. So that means they actually use some of that service and reuse their labor for other legs of the trip. So they've really reduced the actual cost of the Richmond service than they otherwise would through labor savings. And of course, you know, because Hercules is a longer distance, 10 more minutes, you know, there's added fuel costs. So,
Are those round trips that you showed there, the numbers?
Those are one-way trips. The numbers we show per trip is they're one-way trips.
Okay, so how do you deal with the odd number of one-way trips?
Well, that's really details, right? So this is we're doing the cost estimate. We're not necessarily doing a service plan, right? And
It just makes no sense to me to do any kind of plan that has an odd number of one-way trips.
Yeah, well, when we, if we get to a point to run the service, definitely need to maximize the efficiency. Part of it is the commute pattern, right? Usually the first trip out from, say, from Richmond is from Richmond to San Francisco. So this is one to estimate it based on the level of service want to match up and do a cost estimate. So you could end up with an odd number. You could end up with even number when you run the real service plan.
and it depends where you're keeping the vessel, whether you're keeping it at a maintenance facility or out ready for that first morning trip from Hercules. Okay, capital
Ultimately,
costs.
you're going to have an even number of trips. Otherwise, the vessel ends up at the opposite end of the transit on any given day.
No, yeah, the current model is all the ships stay on the San Francisco side in the maintenance facility. Those are so-called revenue trips. So sure, I mean, I think we will, if there's a demand is such, we'll definitely the service plan will have the even number of trips. But there's that kind of flexibility one can have. And again, this is a cost estimate, and when WITA runs a service, they really need to look at the demand, and they would maximize the efficiency and also serve the customer's needs.
Did you look at the San Francisco ferry terminal as having capacity issues?
Actually, that's a really good question. Why we have a cost when we go to the capital side? There's yes, they are pretty much at capacity. So if we start the service, like they start service here, there is a need to build a new maintenance facility. So the capital cost, there's a contribution to a new operations and maintenance facility.
But I think your question was about capacity at the San Francisco current gates that they have. They just expanded enormously, so they actually do have current capacity there to handle boats, but they would definitely have to study that. So moving on to capital costs for a minute. Capital costs have several components to it. They have landside costs, waterside costs, initial dredging, and then operations and maintenance facility, and Ying just mentioned that. So landside costs include everything above the water, obviously, any kind of utilities that is needed for a ferry terminal, pavement for parking or for car access, landscaping, site civil work, that type of thing. On the waterside costs, you need piles, floats, shelter items, construction of the pier, et cetera. And then dredging costs. These were carefully calculated. Unfortunately for Hercules, there's quite a bit of dredging cost involved. Dredging is required to not only to accommodate the depth of the vessel, but then you have to look at, there's a lot of bay mud right there near Hercules. So they have to get from what's called the federal channel, which is already dredged by the federal government. You have to get from the federal channel to the hub or the point location proposed ferry. So
you also
that
have
is
to look at
costly.
the maximum range of tides.
Yes, absolutely. That was considered in the dredging calculations that we did.
I spent 34 years in the Navy.
So you know. One of the things that is interesting about the Bay Area is that there are still debates about where dredge materials get put. That also adds to the expense. If they have to go very far to get rid of the materials, that's more costly than dumping it in a wetlands of some kind. Next slide, thank you. So here's the summary of the capital costs. Again, not a huge amount of difference between the point location and the hub location, just around the edges. But there are differences between the two types of vessels because, as we mentioned, and you will see, the dredging costs being very different because the vessels are different drafts.
I'm going to fast forward to the Pittsburgh slides.
So the city of Pittsburgh also had two different locations that we looked at. They're not far from each other, so there's not a huge difference in cost, but one is a marina location, which actually means that very little to no dredging is needed because it is assumed that the marina already takes care of that dredging. And so there would be nothing further needed. On the Baywalk side, that would be different. Anyway, go ahead. You're going to talk about the scorecard.
Yeah, so this is a same methodology, the scorecard for Pittsburgh's two locations. And so the plus side, so one thing is the distance is pretty far from San Francisco. And so on the travel demand as well as the travel time competitiveness, the city's two locations score lower compared to Richmond. It's just, this is pure geography and distance and time, right? The city does have some factors that outperform Richmond. One is in residential density. Some other factors are the connections, transit connections. So those are like kind of really high-level summary on the demand potential. And on the cost summary, we only have enough information to look at the capital cost of the marina. That's not enough information to run any numbers for the Baywalk location. But I'm going to just focus on the service level, the service, the operating plan. You can see the operating costs jump a lot higher now because, again, to maintain the same level of service, you need to put out more vessels to support that, more crews. So the costs go as low as 14.1 at the level 1 for a POP SF model. Using the same vessel, that cost jump up to 27.4. In the most expensive service scenario, using the WITA vessel, is $65 million per year, and it's not a small number. So this is a really strictly because of distance and travel time. And then we
Do you have any indication as to whether there are a lot of Pittsburgh residents that are actually traveling to San Francisco on a daily basis? That seems kind of a stretch that somebody would buy in Pittsburgh to commute to San Francisco.
Yeah, so back to the scorecard on the total demand is not as high, definitely not as high as Richmond. So back to that one. So they, in that factor, score pretty low. We want to be a little bit careful with looking the travel demand. We're using big data to look at today's all-trip demand, right? So overall, the Transbay demand is a lot lower compared to before the pandemic. So those numbers can change. You know, we hope there will be more demand to jobs, but we're not seeing that today based on today's data. You like without seeing data, you got a really good estimate. Yeah, the demand is not very strong, at least not today's condition. So that we can jump into talk about. So as Jim mentioned, this is the same kind of information, and as a reference point, it is much higher cost for Pittsburgh. So let's look at the capital side.
Yeah, so again, this slide just shows the definitions of the capital costs involved. But again, because it's an existing, it's an existing marina, we've got no initial dredging costs, you know, for this service out there, they would need a new operations and maintenance facility with because they're adding so many new vessels to accommodate the service. The landside costs would be minimal because there's an existing marina there.
How many vessels did you estimate for Hercules? How many new vessels?
Can't remember what it said.
You had 7
It was 7 for Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
You're right about that. Did we put the number?
Yeah, we didn't have that slide here. Yeah, we didn't include the slide.
I want to say it's 4.
Yeah, it is 4 for Hercules, 7 for Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we go through the city slides.
Sorry, I'm making everyone dizzy.
We can start talking about other like kind of summary slides. That would be the future vessel options. As we prepared the study, there was a lot of interest to look at the low and zero emission vessels. So we studied that, and there's interest to look at other vessel types. We did just like look at that at a pretty service level, but here's some of the information we can share with you.
Yeah, so the great news is that technology is changing rapidly. WITA has already bought a zero-emission battery-operated vessel. The technology has been, electric cars are way ahead of electric ferries, mainly because it was easier to figure out how to do charge a car over a ferry. It does require that you bring utilities down to the water side, et cetera, to charge them. So a little more complicated and just, much heavier vehicle to move through the water at the speed that they need. So those were some of the challenges with the technology. But the good news is they are moving very quickly past that. So you're going to see beyond just a battery-powered ferry, you're going to see hydrogen level, these fancy I can't remember what they
Flying
call them.
vessels.
The flying vessels, yes. So by the time some of this infrastructure and ferry service is piloted and planned out, I think we will realistically see these in operation. I know that Vancouver up in Canada has already been piloting a service that is zero emission. And I've been quizzing all my Vancouver colleagues to find out how it's going.
I would expect that hydrogen is probably the more effective path, because the batteries for a over-the-road semi-trailer are two 8,000-pound batteries, and I can't imagine these things are going to be any less. So 16,000 pounds of battery is a lot of displacement that isn't generating revenue, not like passengers are. And to keep something with 16,000 pounds afloat, you need a lot of water line. I don't see batteries as the solution for any long-haul ferries. It's going to be hydrogen.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right, especially the long haul.
Maybe I could just add here, I think this is a really important part of the picture and puzzle for ferry service in Contra Costa County is kind of new technologies for ferries. So you have hydrofoil and hovercraft, right, that are really important, and mainly because of the dredging cost that are involved with each of the locations is pretty significant, particularly in Hercules. Because it's just natural. You've got the Hercules Point that basically is acting as like a giant net, if you will, right, for all this sediment that's coming down, and then it just sits right there in the hub. And so I actually gave a presentation to the City of Hercules City Council, I guess that was last week.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is you don't realize this, but you can literally walk from the Hercules shore all the way out to the point.
You'd get stuck in the mud.
You get stuck in the mud, but it's like
I've
6
tried.
or 7 feet deep. Yeah. But I guess my point is that that's a perfect location for, these new ferry technologies in terms of hydrofoil and hovercraft, because you won't have to have that significant dredging cost. And so it definitely makes it ferry service more economical. I mean, you still have all the operational costs, which are pretty high. But I think if to make this more feasible and more attractive to do, it's really going to come down to new technologies like this.
And if I can just add something, since I am from the City of Hercules, we really appreciate the work Ying and McDonald, Jean, you did, because we really see how much mud there is out there. And really the only solution for a place like Hercules will be hovercraft. With hovercraft, you wouldn't need a pier. You'd leave kind of a ramp, but you wouldn't need a pier. And I've been talking a bit with some of the WIDA folks and thinking about maybe not eventually ferry service to San Francisco. Maybe it would just be kind of like a water taxi service over to Richmond, that you could hop on the Richmond ferry and get into San Francisco if that's what you wanted to do. So, we're thinking about all different kinds of things for the future. Right now, hovercraft, I don't know that they have zero emission, but I know that they're working on it. There's a company in England that's doing so. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I know, Ying, you mentioned, two-stop. I mean, just looking at putting it into the Vallejo line, would that be unreasonable or overly challenging to just add the Hercules stop on the Vallejo run?
I think if we have our infrastructure on our side, that's feasible. One thing to keep in mind is the current vessels, they take a time to slow down and speed up and load passengers. So the estimate from our WITA colleagues takes about 20 minutes more. So there will be a penalty on the Vallejo passengers, like the first stops. So they will be the first on and last off. So we do have this balance, right? So it's good when you make an additional stop, you pick up additional passengers. But the people who got on first, there's a time penalty, and we want to be really careful, right? If that will be the time penalty would discourage ridership from the first stop. But as I mentioned before, once we build the infrastructure and have the vessels, right, those service scenarios can be modified as our ridership needs. And there's a lot of talented staff at WITA. I'm sure they can find the efficiency to design a plan that maximizes ridership and really also maximize the efficiency.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have more to say, or shall I?
We do have a few more slides.
Okay,
We can
go for it.
quickly, the funding piece is important, so we do want to share.
Yeah, so on the funding side, the great news, as you just saw on the previous slide, is that WHEDA's already got $30 million in grant funding to add to zero technology vessels, so that's fantastic. So FTA has 2 specific ferry programs. This is new. In the past, FTA and the federal government really just did not see ferries as public transit. So I'm thrilled personally to see that they now have specific grant programs for ferries. So that's terrific. And then we identified a whole bunch of other opportunities in terms of funding for both the capital side and the operating side of things.
Yeah, I can just quickly wrap up. The table show you the stakeholder engagements, and there's quite a bit of meetings, and both as a bigger group as well as individual meetings. And I do want to finish up by just give you a highlight of the WHEDA's pilot program. So in WHEDA's budget, they set aside $2 million in the current fiscal year to look at pilot services. Their board, they found a subcommittee and to start to guide the staff to work on future pilot projects. We express a lot of strong interest in this future potential WHEDA CCTA partnership. We hope to bring at least one to our county. So this is still in the works, still very, very early. They have some successful pilot that are in the works with strong support from the communities as well as private funding. So we are on top of it, and we hope that one day we can bring a pilot to our county. So that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer additional questions.
Thank you. That's really comprehensive, and I look forward to reading the final report. So let me first see if there are any comments from the commissioners. No? Tim?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I want to make sure this kind of came through in the presentation, is that this was not intended to be any type of recommendation, right? This is really intended to be, I'll say, a quote-unquote report card of, what it would actually take to bring ferry service to any one of these individual locations. And so I think in terms of the next steps, and for this is really kind of looking, one, how does ferry service evolve? I mean, obviously, 2, funding, but it's really going to take a partnership with one of these local jurisdictions, And so I know Commissioner Kelly from Hercules, we've had lots of conversations in terms of the timing of that relative to their vision and the train stop and the completion of Hercules Hub. That might be 5-10 years out, right? Martinez, Martinez has all the signs of potentially, being one of the first cities. They got the marina, et cetera. I think Pittsburgh, Antioch, I just want to be really kind of transparent and clear. I don't think you're doing ferry service to both. You're going to do one or the other, right? And so I think that needs to be kind of discussed, among everyone. And so I think we need to, I think in terms of this kind of pilot program with WHEDA, if you ask me today, what's the next step here? Well, one, it's a pilot. Most likely it's Martinez. And we'll see kind of where it goes, right? But again, it's going to have to take the city of Martinez to also kind of step up and kind of commit and do this with Contra Costa County Transportation, with Contra Costa Transportation Authority. So I just want to kind of make sure that really kind of comes through in this presentation that, again, not intended to be like recommendations or next steps or a report card, or it's pretty much a report card. And I think the other thing that I think it was really done really well, and I thank you to Ms. Smith and Ms. Banker, appreciate it. Money talks. To Ms. Smith and Ms. Banker is that I think it reminds us of the challenges that it takes to do ferry service, right? There's a lot of challenges. Ferry service is expensive. These are all the same challenges we went through as we were kind of expanding ferry service in the Richmond. And then lastly, I want to acknowledge WHEDA and the great work and the great partnership that we have with WHEDA on this study. They've been fantastic. And I know Mike's on the call, so I appreciate his time. And then just really want to point out that he's here and appreciate his time and effort and being here today. And we're kind of all looking forward to see where this goes.
And I'd like to echo that too. I know WIDA's always thinking creatively. Whenever I've been speaking with their executive director, with Mike, or with their board chair, there's always different new ideas. So this is like not set in stone here. Ken?
Just real quick, I mean, you mentioned the public-private partnership, you know, and we talked about hydrogen as the fuel source. Would it be possible to in the next phases of planning, pursue those private partnership portion being one of our potential hydrogen production facilities that are coming online, or look to be coming online, that are not only using waste as the production, you know, material, but again, that might be helpful to them and helpful to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we've got obviously a lot of resources in Contra Costa County that can be leveraged to make this happen.
Okay, any other comments here from commissioners? Emily, do we have any comments from the public, or does anyone from the public wish to speak on this item?
We have not received any public comments.
Okay, well, Ms. Smith, Ms. Banker, thank you very much for all your hard work. We really appreciate it. So now we're moving on to regular, I think Mike wants to say something. Oh, he's just saying goodbye. Okay. We're now going to move on to our regular agenda item 5B, approval of the Transportation Fund for Clean Air 40% fund policy presented by Ying Smith.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. The item in front of you is the TFCA policy, Transportation Fund for Clean Air. But in my presentation, I do want to cover TDM 2.0 because those two concepts are very, very closely related. Let's see. So I think you probably heard about TDM, stands for Transportation Demand Management. And just a little bit of background, what we do, how we do TDM here. We operate under the brand called 5.1 Contra Costa. And we have a long history of overseeing this program as well as implementing the program. The TDM program is implemented by 3 offices. Central and East combined, and is CCTA is the lead agency and is delivered by our consultant AMG. In West County, WICTAC is taking the lead, and they are overseeing their program. In Southwest, SWAT contract out under leadership of City of San Ramon staff. The 3 offices do collaborate regularly, and they work together to deliver both countywide programs as well as programs specific to this subregion. Funding, that's really important, how we fund this program today. Today, the TDM program is funded by Measure J, Program 17. It's 1% of the total sales tax. The other side, we use TFCA, the 40% fund, and I would talk a little bit more about the 40% fund. In total, it's about $1 million from Measure J Program 17, and this year the board just approved the expenditure plan, TFCA expenditure plan, to allow roughly $1.7 million going to projects and programs. And our current practice is to combine these 2 fund sources and allocate the funds by a job housing formula to the 4 RTPCs. And here's a table you've probably seen before to show you the details of what is being done today. Then many of you are familiar with the program. There are a lot of benefits well received by our community and by our elected officials. Not only we focus on the commuters, we also focus on the youth, the students, and we also work with employers, work with community members like colleges to deliver the program. So it's not just about commute, it's really about all modes of transportation, all trips, and really the goal is get more people on transit and walking and biking, so fewer people drive. That is really the goal of this program. And in the implementation, we do have some challenges. Some of the programs been ongoing for a long time. I think we think the biggest challenge is the data side, like how do we measure the effectiveness of the program? How do we track the money? Are we spending our money in the right places for the right activities? So that's really a high-level summary. We do have some details, and we really want to move to this performance-based and rely on high-quality data in reporting and in monitoring, and how we use data to make our program more effective. So we developed a vision, and we are looking for opportunities to improve the current TDM program. We use a brand called TDM 2.0. It's Tim's brand, and it's really talk about how we want to move to the next level. And we set up some goals and objectives, what we want to accomplish. And we started actually talking to the RTPCs and the transit operators as early as last fall, and this year we really have more meetings and more engagement. Just want to share with you, because you hear from your staff as well. We over the last 6 months, we brought the information to the RTPC tax as well as the board. The main comments which we heard and how we address them. The biggest comment we heard is the geographic equity. That is a concept. So we really want to make sure we take care of all four sub-regions. So we make that change. That's the most change between the policy in front of you versus the version you originally saw back in January. That is the change to maintain that kind of geographic equity. And in the process, we also heard that RTPC expressed a role in advancing funding as well as allocating, advancing projects and allocating funding. There's a lot of strong desire for many of the current TDM programs, and people want to maintain the successful programs. They don't want to see a complete wholesale of the program. And there's also concern about the timeline. So I want to share with you like how the steps we get to this point, as well as the detail of what we're proposing, the TFCA policy. We think to get to TDM 2.0, we don't necessarily have to do it in one shot, right? We break it down into 3 steps. Step 1 is what we're doing today. We look for opportunities to change, to improve the current TDM program. We also would like to introduce the TFCA policy for the authority board's consideration for adoption. And step 2 is to develop a TDM strategic plan. We see this happening in the next, in the 2025-26 timeframe. And then a year later, we think we can really go into the full implementation. So we do need to jump back to talk about the TFCA 40% fund. You did hear this back in February, so I don't necessarily have to repeat that. What we like to highlight is that CCTA is the designated administrating agency to allocate the TFCA funds, the 40% out of the total. And as the administrating agency, we have our roles and responsibilities. And this is all in the Air District adopted TFCA 40% fund policies. And so today's practice, how do we go from today's practice and to a new TFCA policy? So this is the kind of the gist of what in the policy, in my presentation. What you have in your staff report, there is a proposed policy right there with a lot of details. And I do want to highlight the fund allocation principles. So first one is the geographic equity. That's something we heard loud and clear. What we're proposing is the funds will be allocated to the subregion to measure by the total benefits each subregion is receiving. So The next one is the definition of countywide projects versus sub-regional projects. Because today's practice, we have a lot of work that's at the countywide level. We need to recognize that. There's a lot of benefits of rolling out some of the programs at the countywide level. For example, we want to say transit incentive program. All residents and travelers to Contra Costa County are eligible to receive those programs. We don't want to send a layer say only people say live in the Transpac area are eligible to receive. So we want to maintain that and really enhance this countywide project concept. We also recognize each sub-region have their own needs. They want to have some programs that are unique to them to meet the transportation needs of their residents and travelers. So we have the concept of the sub-regional projects. So how it works is we see in the call for project process, we receive the request for both countywide as well as sub-regional projects. And all eligible agencies can sponsor a countywide project. It doesn't have to be CCTA. There's a little bit misunderstanding, even though we're the countywide agency, but we're not the only eligible agencies to implement the countywide projects. So we want to carry our collaborative process to really develop the funding by countywide versus sub-regional. The sub-regional project will be divided by the job housing formula. When we sum up the total of benefits, benefits being the projects your residents and travelers will receive, that total will match up with the job housing formula. And in our policy, we'll also define the roles of the RGPCs, also define the roles of the authority board. So we want to give you some examples. This is like what we have. We have a table to show you how hypothetically how the dollars all get divided up. We have a Spare the Air Transit Challenge. It's a transit incentive program. And WeTech has been operating a Guaranteed Ride Home program that is available to all travelers in Contra Costa County. It is a countywide program. And SWAT has been responsible for the Vanpool program. Again, it's a countywide program. Paso Class, that's a youth program. So we see those are the examples of countywide projects and programs. And in the sub-regional projects, there are some suggestions that we heard directly from the project sponsors. In the SWAT region is the school bus, the Traffics and Loma Linda school bus programs. In East County, Tri-Delta Transit has expressed an interest in expanding their Try My Ride microtransit service. Then we have a table to show you how the numbers all worked out, right? So if those projects all are coming in, and we have cost estimates, and those are not final numbers. So those are really, we need some numbers to illustrate how the math works, but those are not the final numbers. So the countywide projects, if we are in agreement, CCTA as well as the RTPC will work together. If we're all in agreement, in this example, the countywide projects and programs would take out about $565,000. So the total pot is about 1.7. This is TFCA only. And then the rest of money will be divided to the 4 sub-regions by the job housing formula. And then at the end, the bottom table shows you when you sum up the benefits from the countywide projects as well as the sub-regional projects, they all match up to that job housing formula to each sub-region. And the total come out to be that $1.7 million. So again, just a note, I don't want to forget this. Measure J Program 17, we're not proposing any change in the allocation. That is still going to be divided by the sub-region based on the job housing formula. This is narrowly for the TFCA program. So that's kind of the math, how it works out. Here's the kind of process, right? I did touch on a little bit. We do a call for project process, and then the project sponsors, they can just apply. We're going to do a drop box. They can just send in their information. CCTA staff will help with the technical assistance because there's a cost effectiveness calculation that can be a little bit challenging if the agencies are doing it for the first time. And then the important step is the collaborative process. We're going to sit down and talk about it, and then talk about like whether though the top line, whether those countywide projects, we have consensus, right? Whether we can all agree those are really good, important projects. We likely have more requests than the funds are available, and that's why we have probably have multiple conversations. We want to avoid the duplication. We really want the best projects and programs to flow to the top. In this process, the benefit, granted, if we are in an oversubscribed situation, that means more requests than funds available, we have to say no to some of the projects. But the benefit of it is the authority board get to say no, get to pick the best of the best. So that the process, we hope, would generate more requests, generate more better ideas, and also allow that kind of testing, right, the pilot projects to come through. So the authority board may be in a position to say no to some agencies, and that is the bad news. The good news is you get to say yes to the good projects. You get to say yes to the great projects. So here's how the process goes. We do have a draft. Okay, so this is some detail. We'll show you a draft schedule, how that works. And you have seen some of the same information before, just to restate the eligible project types as well as the eligible project sponsors. And I do want to share with you, because it's a preview of some what I talk about. In the process, we hope to generate new ideas. And one is to definitely we need to maintain the brand. That's how we communicate with the customers. And then we want to maintain some of the existing programs, but I really want to share with you this new idea. It's still in the works. The board has to approve that, right? This is not like set in stone. But I want to share with you, our team developed this one. It's a transit incentive program by using a lottery system. People can participate in this system when they actually take a transit trip. You cannot just promise us, you actually have to take the transit trip and give us a screenshot of your Clipper card on board on any trips in and out of Contra Costa County. And every week, we have a winner. We're going to draw a winner for the reward of $511. The graphic is eye-catching. We keep a name temporary called Big Win on Transit. The customers can win a big dollar, very attractive. It can be a retail gift card, right? Doesn't have to be on Clipper. And we think it's also a win for our transit operators. We can draw more ridership to transit. People, either existing riders or new riders, they can participate. We hope it's also a win for CCTA because we get our name out and let people know that's what we want to reward you when you actually take transit. So it's an idea. This will replace some of the existing incentives because they are, we just think it's good we try something new to redraw attention. Because when I first saw it, I said, what? That's my reaction, right? In a way, if we can get that kind of reaction from our customers, it's a good thing. People may ask about it. How do I participate? How do I get to win the prize? And we still have some little bit details to work out, like how we do the administrative part. We ran the numbers. It's not more expensive than what we're doing today. It's a different way to approach our customers and reward people when they give transit a try or continue to ride transit, because the more you ride, the more often you ride, the more opportunities you get to win this big prize. And we also continue some of the programs we are doing today because they're really, really beneficial. They all work together really well. And here's the next steps, right? If this is the policy under your consideration, and if our authority board approves it, we'll release call for project right away, like the very next day. And in the May timeframe, we're going to work with RTPCs to really review those projects, and there will be multiple meetings we anticipate. We designed like an early and late schedule. The code process may go through to the board for the board to adopt the projects in July. It could go as late as either September or October. October is the very last month, like to meet the air district schedule. It is a pretty aggressive schedule. We're not trying to do this to make life difficult for everyone else, right? There's the October schedule. There's also need, we heard from project sponsors. They want some certainty of how they build next year's budget. For example, the Traffic and Normal Route School program. If they know the board approved their allocation, they can build into next year's budget. They know this money, they can use it to support the program. Same as Tri-Delta Transit, and same as for any project sponsor that want to roll out new program. So it's a balance, like when we can get through the process and at the same time allow sufficient time for us to go through that collaborative process. That's all I have, and happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ying. So any comments or questions here from commissioners? None? Well, then I have some comments. Okay, thank you. First of all, I know I've spent a lot of time on this, listening to a whole bunch of people, back and forth quite a lot. And I just want to say that the subregions, the RTPCs, they all have concern about money flowing to them because they have different projects now, more or less. But they're really concerned about that. And that was also expressed in the technical advisory committees of each agency. Even if they haven't come and said it to you, I know that that has happened. So that's one concern. I think my biggest concern about moving forward with this TFCA policy is the countywide projects. Not that they're a bad idea, but what would happen if a project in the future came to CCET and it was so big that it would eat up all of the funds off the top before the other funds were distributed to the subregions? That's a concern for me, and I think for other subregions. And so I would like to see the countywide projects have a not to exceed amount, say maybe 1/3 of the total available funds for that particular year. And that way, funds could flow to the countywide projects, and then the rest could go to different sub-regional projects, special projects, or the other funds that are left on the side. I also have a comment about like the pass to class. I know that CCTA is considering using an app for a lot of the bus programs. I think that's a really cool idea, but I realize it'll probably take some time to adapt for that, and we could get some good VMT data on that. So I don't know who would want to participate. WCTAC might like to be part of it, maybe AMG, maybe others, or maybe somebody outside, but I think that's pretty cool. But it will take some time for people to use that. And lastly, in terms of the incentives that you provided, the $511, that's interesting. I'd like to see that tried out, but I wouldn't want it to, at least in the short term, replace some of the other incentives that we offer to different residents, either students or seniors for taking, buses or occasional ferry rides or whatever. So those are some of my comments there. Any response?
Yeah, I can take it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've heard all those comments, from the RTPCs. I'm not gonna. This has been pretty challenging with the TFCA policy, getting this through all the RTPCs, and we have heard all these comments before. And the policy that's in front of you right now, we feel like addresses all of those concerns. I think the main part of this, in my understanding, I've reached out to all the RTPCs on the new policies. I did leave a voicemail with John Nemeth, and I never got a phone call back, but I wanted to check in with him to see if he had any concerns about the policy, and never got any feedback on the new revised policy. But I did talk to TransPac, SWAT, and TransPlan. They're actually okay with the new policy the way it's written as it is today. I haven't confirmed that with WCTAC yet, but I think that a lot of the concerns that we got from WCTAC and the other RTPCs, we specifically addressed those in the policy. So particularly, like for example, the countywide projects, the way that we're addressing that, Commissioner Kelly, is that it specifically has language in there that the countywide programs will be identified and selected in collaboration with the RTPCs. Mm-hmm. And so we're not trying, this is not a CCTA money grab. This is not us trying to just take money off the top and not let there be any money left over for any of the RTPCs. That has not been the intent and never will be the intent. I think the intent here is that we really try to enhance the collaboration on the countywide programs, and really look at TDM in a different way rather than just looking at it from the standpoint of as a program, but really trying to understand how is this program really providing benefit, and I think that was the whole idea behind TDM 2.0, was to really focus on, how to get better data, out of these programs, right? And there's a lot of programs that are great programs, and I don't think this kind of came across in the presentation very well, but I think TDM 2.0 is very much the future, and TDM is very much the future of CCTA. I do see larger investments in TDM in the future. And I'm going to get a little bit technical, and I think some of you have heard this before, but I think the Innovate 680 program, as you all are aware, we're trying to add a gap, a lane, right, for the Innovate 680, and so that is generating a number of VMT daily, and we have to mitigate that. Well, TDM is going to be a part of that, and so in order for us to mitigate that TDM, we have to have better data, not self-reporting data that the Air District requires, but better actual verifiable data of all of these programs, so we can establish a very concrete baseline of how much our existing TDM programs are reducing VMT and providing a benefit. Once we have that data, we'll be able to understand, quantify from a quantifiable standpoint, I don't know if that's even a word, quantifiable standpoint, to be able to understand how much more benefit or VMT reduction we need to add with additional TDM programs to meet the goals of Innovate 680. And so for example, just to do a little quick hypothetical math example, but let's just assume you got 100,000 VMT, 80,000 of it you're able to use by providing a brand new express bus service in the 680 corridor. Well, that additional 20% that is going to be needs to happen with mode shift, right? And so in other words, we're going to have to incentivize that last 20% to get into that bus, right? And by incentivizing that last 20% is going to have to take TDM basically to do that. And so basically we have to understand in the 680 corridor exactly how much VMT reduction we're getting out of the existing TDM programs, because CEQA and the state do not allow us to take credit for that VMT reduction. It has to be in addition to our existing programs. And so without having a good quantity or good verifiable data, we can't determine what that additionality needs to be to get to that 20%. So we have to have good baselines to determine the additionality. So again, this was never intended to really be, CCTA, taking over TDM. It was more about making sure we're getting better reportable data, also making sure that we're collaborating with the RTPCs on all of this, and then also making sure that we've got good programs, and also supporting the programs that we like. So, for example, say the Street Smarts program, right? The Street Smarts program is a really great program, but it does not reduce VMT, right? It does not reduce VMT. So it's going to be really important that we're picking programs that have a high VMT reducing benefit, so that way it does leave money left over, for those programs that we like the Street Smarts programs, right? And so I think that's going to be really important. So I think we've talked with all the RTPCs. They are okay with the program. Again, I haven't confirmed that with WCTAC, and happy to do so between now and the next board meeting. And maybe Corey can provide feedback on that. But I think the other piece of this is the TDM policy is very much, I'll say, going to evolve, right? So the very, very first step we're going to do to implement this program is we need to look at our existing programs first and understand how the existing programs are performing. And then based on that existing analysis, then we'll be able to determine maybe the next fiscal year what changes and tweaks we might need to take. So I'm envisioning that this policy will evolve because over this next fiscal year, as we're evaluating these programs and understanding, one, how to get better data, what tools we need to collect better data, we're gonna learn more about these programs. We'll learn more about what the policy really needs to evolve into. And I think at this point, the policy really just memorializes a lot of our existing processes, but also I think focuses on enhanced collaboration on the programs and RTPCs, with the RTPCs.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about the VMT reduction and moving to different ways to collect data, particularly on the transit ridership passes, you know, for students, for seniors, for everybody. I am just concerned, you know, if this staff is not here anymore and this policy is here, I could see someone coming in and just saying, hey, we're going to allocate almost all the money from TFCA to countywide policies and countywide programs, rather. And then, you know, the RTPCs who may have some other programs, you know, that they're already running just feel like they've lost out. So that's why I'd kind of like to see a not to exceed amount. And maybe just revisit this, you know, every year to see how it goes. So those are my comments.
If I may.
Ken?
So, I understand where you're coming from, but I think what we're looking for when we do this work, especially making financial decisions, is best impact, lowest dollar, or being, you know, appropriate in our spending. So with the data that we acquire, because I represent countywide, let's say, I am not going to fund a project that I'm going to get a bigger bang out of when it comes to a sub-regional project. So if a sub-regional, with the data we're acquiring through TDM 2.0, if we're getting a bigger bang for our buck through a sub-regional program than we would through a county-wide program, we're going to fund the sub-regional program. And that's where the data is really, really important. And I get the fear factor, but it really needs to be based on the data as to what is the appropriate project or program to fund, because we're going to meet the net result that we're trying to get. And that's where I don't want to see us hamstring that in any way, because it could be the countywide project is going to be the biggest bang for the buck as opposed to a sub-regional or two sub-regional projects. So I really think it has to be case by case, and we shouldn't handcuff ourselves in any given way because we want to meet the actual goal. So do we sacrifice the goal or do we fear is how I would look at it.
Yeah, maybe you're more trusting than I am, but anyway, any other comments here from commissioners? No. Emily, do we have any public comment?
We do. Mr. Riley?
Hello, commissioners. I just had a couple of things to point out briefly. As Tim had mentioned, we've been in a lot of conversations and do appreciate the inclusion of a lot of our comments into this. I had just wanted to say John's on vacation right now, so that's why he's not responding.
That's helpful.
He's just on vacation. One small little thing in there, in your presentation, Ying, you had mentioned that projects with the highest CE should be given priority. So, for example, we use some of our, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself to people who didn't know me. I'm Corey Riley, and I work for WICTAC, and I manage the 511 Contra Costa program in West County. So we had some leftover funds that were unspent during some of the coronavirus years, and we used that on a capital project for improvements around the Del Norte BART station, where we were able to help provide some bike lanes and pedestrian things. And it was our first big capital project that we used the TFCA funds for. And that was really, really, really hard to get the cost effectiveness numbers on. We had to keep sort of playing with the numbers and moving it around, and we just barely squeaked by with making cost effectiveness. So as far as prioritizing things that have the highest cost effectiveness, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And I bet that it's probably a lot harder to do capital projects with this. So that just might be a little point that we would want to talk about later. I guess I have a question about getting rid of the incentive programs in favor of the one program. This was the first that I've heard about this, about CCTA staff's plan to get rid of all the incentive programs and sort of consolidate it into one program. I guess I'm wondering, is that part of what you're asking for approval for this committee here to move forward? If so, I would say that that item just would warrant some further investigation and could be part of our ongoing work about finding what works in the current program and what doesn't, what we want to keep. So I would just say that that one point, I would recommend that we discuss that further before moving it forward.
Thank you. Emily, any other public comment?
We have not received any other public comments.
Okay, so
So
bring,
can we just respond to that public
Please.
comment, please? Because I think Ying was presenting the 501 spare as just a concept. That's not part of this action. That
Right,
obviously, that warrants obviously further discussion with the RTPCs. That's a clear example of countywide programs will be identified and done in collaboration with the RTPCs. I think Ying's just trying to just show that as an example of how, you know, the TDM 2.0 can really, I think she's just trying to leave you with an exciting note that there's existing programs today, yes. How are they performing? We don't know. But are there other programs that could be better? Maybe, maybe not, right? And I think that's the whole purpose of this entire exercise, is really going through all of our existing programs and really determining which ones are working well, which ones are not working well, because we need to have we need to make sure we're focusing on this cost effectiveness. This gets back to whole CCTA 4.0 about making sure that we're investing and getting our most highest return on investment on our dollars, right? And that's what this is all about, you know? And so I know there's a lot of little programs here and there that everyone likes. If we need to keep those because of some particular reason, then we can certainly talk about that. But again, this is the whole intent of this policy is to really start doing this in a much more collaborative, enhanced kind of collaborative way, right? In terms of the entire process, picking the projects, picking the programs, you know, and particularly like the countywide programs. I mean, you can actually, there's a slide that Ying showed all the countywide programs that exist today. And those countywide programs are done in partnership with the RTPCs, you know, like, for example, Guaranteed Ride Home program. You know, that is a program that's being done by WCTAC on behalf of the entire county. That's totally fantastic. You know, there might be like, for example, Pass to Class. You know, that's another program that I think that WCTAC was doing, and immediately there was a lot of concerns about, well, wait a second, where's that funding going? Well, the intent is not to take that funding away from West County or from the WCTAC. The intent is to really look at Pass to Class and say, okay, let's identify this now as a countywide program. Let's now jointly implement it with the RTPCs, make sure that the funding still flows to the RTPCs, and then jointly implement with the RTPCs. So again, this is not CCTA trying to take money off the top and CCTA is going to implement all the countywide programs on our own. This is about the countywide programs being more consistent, better available, modernized, and making sure we're getting better data, which we're not doing now, you know. And so I think it's just enhancing these programs to where we can get better data, make them more available through a mobile app, and then also potentially offer more programs, you know. And so I don't want this to seem like this is a CCTA off the top money grab. It's very much so. Let's look at what benefits the entire county. As Commissioner Carlson mentioned, the sub-regional programs are just as important as the countywide programs. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to offer those sub-regional programs because we recognize that each of the sub-regions have their own unique programs that are successful. And so we don't want to take those away. And so what we want to do is make sure that we've got a really good balance between the countywide programs and the sub-regional programs. In fact, if we went back to that table, I'm actually not anticipating a whole lot of changes to what we're currently offering today. In fact, like I mentioned already, the first phase of this is to analyze the existing programs and understand what the benefits are of the existing programs. And then once we better understand the benefits, then we can talk about potential changes, and maybe we don't change anything. But first step is get the data, and do that collaboratively among all the RTPCs. Because very much so what's happening now is the money is flowing to the RTPCs, and there's not a lot of like collaboration happening, you know, and that's really the whole purpose of the policy, is to enhance that collaboration, to make sure you have consistent branding, consistent program implementation, and consistent program development across all the programs, across all the subregions, and also to really learn from each other. Like Pass the Class is a great example. I think that was developed by WCTAC and now offered countywide. That's a fantastic example of learning from each other, best practices, and making sure we're offering the best programs we can to the public.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. I also agree with you that the example that Ying gave was just an example. And as I've been thinking about this, you know, for example, with the bus passes, a change to going from just passing out paper passes to actually using an app, it's not going to happen overnight. Not everybody's going to adapt that overnight. And so maybe, you know, some of the subregions could work with CCTA on that to adapt it so we could eventually begin to get some data. But, you know, there just have been some concerns about where this could go. And like I said, if you folks are not here, we just don't know, you know, what would happen in the future. So I'm always a little bit wary about things that just say, you know, we'll just discuss this. Thank you anyway. So any other comments? Emily?
We have not received any other public comments.
Okay, and any other comments here from commissioners? No, so we have a motion here before us.
I move resolution 24-20-16-G.
Second.
Okay, Emily, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haskew,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Abstain?
Motion passes unanimously with Chair Kelly abstaining.
Thank you. So now we'll go on to the next program, which is circulation of the draft fiscal year 20, have I moved ahead too far?
Yes, this one here.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Contra Costa County Integration Transit Plan, and this is authorization to execute amendment number 1 to agreement number 360 with Sam Schwartz to prepare the countywide ITP presented by Ying Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, you have me again, third item in a row. Today, I want to introduce Kate Sargent. Many of you have met her. She's the project manager from Sam Schwartz for the Integrated Transit Plan. The item in front of you is a contract amendment number 1. We like to use this opportunity to keep you updated, because the last time you heard update from the team was the October board workshop, and a lot have been done, and we heard a lot of feedback and from the transit operators. So we want to use this opportunity to share a progress report with you. So Kate, when you have a moment, if you can share your screen, that would be great.
Pressing. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. The agenda for this update is just to give you an idea of where we are with developing the action plan for this project, as well as takeaways from operator workshops that we had to discuss recommendations, and then wrapping up with the proposed budget amendment to support the work. So happy to take any questions as we go along, of course. So the foundation of this project was a market assessment that we have done a lot of work on so far, that looked at how travel patterns have changed since COVID. It looked at where there could be a mismatch between travel, between transit service and demand, and looked at where the major origins and destinations throughout the county and what the travel time on transit was compared to auto travel. And then based on all of this data analysis, we conducted a framing workshop with key stakeholders to get feedback on that analysis work and identify what opportunities and ideas stakeholders already had coming into this project, or based on what we presented, and developed a set of potential recommendations And we then had these operator working sessions where we were able to sit down and go through the recommendations in detail with each of the transit operators. Coming out of this process, CCTA, in conjunction with stakeholders, determined that there was a need for some additional information to go into the development of our recommendations, looking at where there might be latent or untapped demand through more detailed analysis, through bringing in LAVTA and the transit service that they provide on 680 as part of the puzzle, and conducting a public survey. While we drew on existing survey work to develop our recommendations, there was a desire to speak directly with the public and hear from them. And so then incorporating all of this additional work, we'll then revisit our proposed recommendations to see if anything new should be added, and then create packages of improvements and deliver the action plan document. So that's where we are with the project in our timeline. And so in terms of our recommendations, which we're going to share an overview of today, and then happy to go into any more detail as needed, we are looking at developing a core transit network, defining what a core transit network for the county could be. So that would include regional services like BART, Amtrak, ferry, Transbay bus services. So our recommendations are largely assuming that these services exist as they do today. So we're not making recommendations for BART service or Amtrak service, for example. And then also developing proposed transit priority corridors for the county. So where we could prioritize and speed up fixed route bus service on key travel corridors with infrastructure and branding and improved service levels. And then also a frequent bus network. So the difference between a transit priority corridor and a frequent bus network is really just that with the transit priority corridors, there's the addition of infrastructure because it is warranted, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But then the frequent bus corridor would be corridors that just have a certain level of bus frequency because that's warranted. So then in addition to this core transit network that we're recommending, we're also looking at accessing the core transit network. And so these access area transit improvement zones around the core transit network could include microtransit and other feeder services, car share, active transportation and micromobility, all connecting at mobility hubs, as well as the autonomous deployments of autonomous transit network or ATN. So, similar to the similar or exactly the same as the Glideways service that you probably are familiar with. So this is just a little bit about sort of how we're thinking about the menu of options that we can apply. And so this just shows you a little bit about how we're thinking about where we deploy these kinds of services. So transit priority corridors are countywide in a sense, but also are going to provide a number of local trips as well. And so frequent buses is maybe a bit more local than that in nature. And then a number of services that are really, like I was just mentioning, access to the core transit network, and then mobility hubs, which are the connection points between services. So based on some detailed analysis that we did, as well as talking with transit operators about just really the practical aspects of deploying these services in their service areas, this is what we've developed. So the gold yellow color is our proposed transit priority corridor network. And then the pink is the frequent bus network, which would be, like I said, also a similar frequent service, but just without the addition of say, bus lanes and other infrastructure. And then the blue are the proposed significant countywide in nature mobility hubs. So in addition to this, we'd also be proposing a network of more local mobility hubs as well. And then shown here are proposed access improvement zones. So this we determined these based on a bunch of analysis, including looking at the countywide bike and pedestrian plan in terms of what the proposed zones for improvements are that have not been completed yet. Looking at where we could potentially deploy first last mile microtransit, looking at population and job density and other factors, and travel demand in general. And so these zones, would be the subject of more detailed planning as we progress this project to identify what mix of things would be included in each of these zones. So they're all anchored by a proposed mobility hub, but could include micromobility. They could include, shuttle services, AV shuttle services, connecting bus services, car share, a number of things depending on the appropriate thing in the context. So then we presented this as well as detailed project sheets for each particular zone and each particular transit priority corridor in workshops with each of the operators in January. And we went through project by project and talked about, is this the exact right place for the mobility hub? The merits of each particular transit priority corridor in their service area. And what we got out of this was working through clear definitions for the elements that we are including in the action plan. So helping come to a common understanding of where we might deploy, some of these tools that I in our toolbox that I presented. And we also did modify some of the transit priority corridors based on operator knowledge of the travel market. So, some that we thought maybe, based on the data, might not rise to the top. Some of them we did end up including, for example. Some of them, based on conversations, operators thought, it wasn't, maybe it wasn't necessary for us to include that. So we updated this based on the feedback that we got. And then we also made some updates to access improvement zones. So as I alluded to, in some cases, we slightly adjusted the location of mobility hubs based on their local feedback. We also had a lot of discussions around emerging mobility options and their desire to deploy emerging mobility where we can have new services. So where they already know that bus service works, it doesn't, maybe that's not the right place for us to put something new and untested, but maybe this is a way for us to just further expand the network of transit services as a focus, at least in this plan. And then, from here, do you want me to turn this over to you, Ying?
Yeah, I can take it over. So thank you, Kate. So the item in front of you is to approve amendment number 1. In amendment number 1, there are 3 major reasons why we asked for that. One is this is based on the feedback from the transit operators and our internal team. We want to look at the latent demand. So that's what's missing in the first task of the market assessment. And the second piece is also a request to add a LAFTA in the consideration in a more limited scope. So LAFTA is a very important partner here because part of the TIRCP grant that we use to support this study, that they were also named as one of the partners. The focus is along the 680 corridor, that connection, with that coordination between County Connection and LAFTA. And we'd like to use this opportunity to really illustrate how we can do more coordination and rather than other kind of other changes. We think that's really important. We can work within today's structure and really improve the coordination between the agencies and for our services. So we think that's a really positive addition. And the third piece we're adding is a public survey. We want to target both the non-riders, the general public, as well as the riders. Now we got to this point that we have something really tangible for people to respond to. And we want to carry our public survey to not only get their input, right, but really inform people of our work and inform people get their input on what the future look like, future of transit in Contra Costa County. So with the 3 addition, Kate, can you move to the next slide? Now we just want to show the dollars and cents in front of you. The increase is increase the budget by $244,000. $170.99, and the total budget, now the new total is more than just over $2 million, and we itemized the changes. So that's one is the update, and the other side is the action in front of you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments here from commissioners?
Yes. Did you remove any scope or change any of the existing scope? Or are we just adding those 3 items?
No, we didn't remove the scope. There are some internal efficiencies that we realized we didn't like. So there is some scope we didn't think it would cost as much. There's some minimum adjustments, but the as is the increase in the scope and budget.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? I have one on the transit priority corridors, particularly the ones 5, 6, and 7 that go from kind of Central County out to East County. Are you envisioning something like, microtransit in those areas?
Like to access the transit priority corridor?
Yeah, just to get from one place to another, because it doesn't
Yeah.
seem, I don't know if there's much fixed route out there. I'm not that familiar with the area, but I know at times there's a lot of need, and there's a lot of backup of cars, particularly during commute hours.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I can just flip back and forth here. So in some areas in that, like where you see 16 and 6, we have proposed the access improvement zones, just based on the factors that I noted in terms of population density and job density, and prioritize bike and ped improvements and the like. But whoops, wrong way. But if you feel that we should take a closer look at 5, 6, and 7 and look at additional access improvement zones, we can definitely take that back.
No, I'm just curious about what you might be envisioning, so I'll just wait and see. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
sure.
can just add quickly. The transit priority corridors, they include not only the frequency increase, but also include capital improvements. For example, transit signal priority, any treatment to prioritize transit. So when we develop the action plan, we're not necessarily thinking about the physical constraints here. We're really looking into the future to be visionary. Granted, in implementation, there still probably will be another layer of getting funding prioritized among the transit priority corridors. So in that area, we are recommending something really capital intense improvements to really prioritize transit.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Emily, do we have any public comment on this item?
We have not received any public comments.
Oh, okay, so bringing it back here, we have a motion before us?
Motion to approve the amendment to the agreement with Sam Schwartz.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Carlson, seconded by Persons. Emily, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haskew,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. So now on to our final item, which is the circulation of the draft fiscal year 24-25 Congestion Management Agency budget, presented by John Huang.
Good afternoon, Chair Kelly and Commissioners. My name is John Huang. I'm Director of Planning for CCTA. Typically each year in April, based on our Joint Powers Authority, the JPA for CTA, staff is required to develop our Congestion Management Agency budget and present that to the city's planning managers association, the PMAs, and get the city's approval. And then once the city's approved, then we roll the CMA budget into the whole authority agency budget in June. I have a short slide deck here, which I'm going to go through. So the Congestion Management Agency consists consistent of three parts. We play a role in the Regional Planning and Growth Management Program, which is a GMP, which is really what Measure J is about. We looked at land use, we look at the urban line limit, growth management program, and looking at growth management program checklists, where we make sure that the money gets back to the cities on a return to source. We manage the countywide transportation travel demand model. And also, I would explain this role is to work with all the agencies in the county. Our role as the congestion management program really is to work for the cities on behalf of the region, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. We coordinate a lot of programs and projects regionally, and we work with this. We incorporate those projects and programs, working with the cities. For example, One Bay Area grant, where we facilitate the allocation of funding from the state and federal funding to the cities and local funding. A lot of these efforts that the planning department does really kind of mix between the GMP as well as the CMP function. There's also a smaller category, which is the sustainable community strategies. In previous years, MTC would provide us a set amount of funding aside for this effort, which is really looking at priority development areas and coordinating with MTC on a regional basis on the transportation, the TOC, transit-oriented communities. Since with the past several years, that money has been less and less, and eventually going forward, we may combine that SCS with the CMA function. So just to highlight some of the projects and programs that we've identified in the packet and the staff report, a lot of the growth management program effort that we do is regional planning, providing technical assistance. That's about $760,000, and I just kind of combine a lot of these line items in the attachment, just for presentation only. But you can look at the line items and see the specific projects. We work with the cities on the travel demand model. That's something that the city uses. That's something that we maintain. We've been looking at big data for the past 3 years now, and hope to continue that next year. And I have two asterisks up there. When it's listed as an asterisk, it means that we're splitting the money between the GMP and the CMA function. So if you just want to bring that to your attention. And then, for example, if there's two asterisks there, that means that other cities are contributing. For example, the big data, we have about 12 jurisdictions that are contributing to the cost to offset the cost of the $550,000 indicated there. And then also we continue to look at the next phase of the VMT implementation. As far as the congestion management program, one of the big things, if not the biggest thing that we're working on this year, is really developing the countywide transportation plan that really sets us up for the next several years, and really sets us up for the transportation expenditure plan. So a lot of effort is going into the CTP development, which includes the environmental impact report development, and really working with all the jurisdictions closely as we put together a CTP that lays out our plan for the next 25 years. We continue to implement Vision Zero, which is a safety aspect of active transportation. We want to reduce or eliminate accidents and fatalities to 0%, and strive to continue to work on that aspect. This is a section that is part of the CMA, which I want to highlight. These are programs or projects that are fully 100% reimbursable through the OVAC grant and other grants that we received. Again, this is net zero to CCTA and the cities. Now, this really summarizes a budget of $7.4 million for the CMA budget. Again, it's split between the GMP and the CMA. And again, GMP is money that we receive from the Measure J. And the 3%, you think that's a lot of money, but it's actually, the 3% really splits between not only the planning function, but also facilities. And then, for instance, the rent on this facility and other items that CCTA incurs. That budget is $3.4 million. And then the CMA function, which CCTA receive funding from MTC. These are state and federal funding, and we provide the match to that federal funding, and then that's where the cities come in. This year's matching contribution from the local jurisdiction is at $620,000. Now, keep in mind that this money really fluctuates year after year. Like last year was close to the $300,000, and this year it increased twofold. But then if you look historically, it kind of ebbs and flows depending on the amount of work that we do here at CCTA. So with that, this thing is really sensitive. With that, I would like to seek your approval for staff to present this budget to the Public Managers Association at the next meeting. And once they approve it, we would like to roll this up to the General Authority budget in June. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other comments? No? Emily, do we have any comments from the public?
We have not received any public comments.
Okay, so bringing it back here, we have a motion before us.
Move approval.
We have we're first.
I'll second. Good, Mr. Carlson.
Okay, motion by Meadows, seconded by Carlson. Emily, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Vice Chair Haskew?
Yes.
Chair Kelly?
Yes?
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So moving on, we do not have any correspondence. Comments? I don't have any comments. Are there any comments here from commissioners? Yes.
I'll just thank former Chair Perkins for your leadership. And then greetings from Teresa Geringer.
Oh, yes.
Texting with her a short time ago.
Yes.
She says to say hello.
Nice, nice. Any other comments? No. Mr. Hale, do you have any comments?
Just likewise, thank you, Commissioner Perkins, for your leadership for the past year and leading this group. And we got another great year in front of us at the helm with Commissioner Kelly, so appreciate it. Thank you. Looking forward to your leadership over the next year. We're going to have a lot of interesting, I think, policy topics. I think they're going to be coming to the PC over the next year, similar to the one today. And then just a quick update on Gomentum Station. I gave the same update to APC this morning, but you know, as of Monday, April 1st, you know, we are now operating Gomentum Station. It was somewhat of a seamless transition, a couple hiccups here and there, but generally we were open for business on Monday. There was basically no interruption or disruption, you know, to the partners, which was great. Still some things to work out in terms of transfers of some of the assets, and working out some of the kinks, but all in all, great transition. Chair Arnrich, the Authority Board Chair Arnrich, sent a really nice letter to AAA on Monday to kind of congratulate or just thanking them for their partnership and kind of celebrating, not congratulating, but celebrating our partnership and celebrating the great work that we've done over the last 5 years. So yeah, so just wanted to kind of mention that, and I'll have probably some more updates at the next Authority Board meeting.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's nice. Thank you. Okay, with all of that, then if there's no other business, we will adjourn to May 2nd at 1:30 p.m.